Welcome to Learning Outdoors, and we're going to plant some seeds. I know it's only May, but this is the time of year that we plant the seeds and we wait for the things to germinate, and then they pop up beautifully and with beautiful flowers and buds. So this is the time we're going to start thinking about what can we do for the future. My name is Ruth Rumack. I am the founder and executive director of education at Ruth Rumack's Learning Space, and I am delighted to be able to share some ideas with you tonight for all ages and all stages, from grade, well, pre-K really, or K, all the way through to the end of high school. We've got some ideas there too. So let's start at the beginning. That's us. We have, now we are currently all online. All of our services are being provided online, thanks to the pandemic, which is really, it's a blessing and a curse because in fact, we love to see our students one-to-one. And when we do get to see our students one-to-one, we have a very active, very engaging way of teaching. You'll often see kids bouncing down the halls on giant bouncy balls and really becoming actively involved, multimodal, multisensory, one-on-one instruction. And we also have a whole host of innovative group classes as well. But over the last year, we have moved entirely online so that we can provide our services, not just in our communities and our neighborhoods where we have locations in Toronto, but actually globally. And that's been the silver lining of all of this, is that we've gotten to meet many families from around Canada, as well as outside of Canada and internationally. And we've really enjoyed working with them. And we've taken that one-on-one active learning and transferred it to the online sphere, which is having some great success. So we're really pleased with the way that things are going there. Let's start talking about getting outside. So here we are. We have to talk about the pandemic because it's really affected our kids, and it's affected our kids in a very significant way. That is both on an academic level, on an emotional level, on a social level. And what we're looking to do now is to step away from the computer, step away from the phones and the screens, and try and get outside and get some fresh air, as well as avoiding that summer slide. So summer slide is real. Summer slide is the fact, and there's a lot of research behind it, that tells us that students will lose between 2 and 3 months of their gains throughout the school year from June through to September. So what you ended up knowing in June, you may not have that same knowledge when you go back to school in September. And I think the fact that we've been on again, off again with online learning, in-person learning, etc., it's working for some kids, it's not working for other kids. And there's going to be a lot of catch up to do. So this summer is an opportunity for us to spend some time outdoors, spend some time with our kids, or send them outdoors to play on their own in a controlled environment, of course, and let them explore and learn at the same time. The beauty of this is that the sky is the limit. And, you know, if you've got a student or a child who has an interest in something, let them go with it and really take it to as far as they can in terms of their interest level and searching out answers for whatever it is that they're interested in. We're not bound by the curriculum, which is another great thing. And the fact that you can take it outside, there's a lot of research that supports the benefits of that too, we're going to talk about in a moment. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. So when we talk about fostering a child's interests, I like to say it's a part of honoring a child's unique abilities or unique genius, something that they really get interested in, they're really perhaps good at, or something that they just have found an interest in, and you want to take it a little further, take it to the next step. So these pictures are courtesy of our fantastic teacher, Susan Muscovich, who also helped put this presentation together. And that's Susan and her daughter. Well, that's not Susan, but that is her daughter in there. Her daughter came to her recently and said, you know, I want to know more about birds, and became interested in bird calls and was listening to the birds outside of her window and noticing different birds as she was walking to school. She's in grade 1 this year. So her mom did an amazing thing, went on Facebook, tried to find some Facebook groups about bird watchers, and came across this gentleman who you see in this picture with the binoculars, who was able to arrange a private guided tour through one of the the parklands that we have in and around Toronto. I think it was Tommy Thompson Park. And they spent the whole afternoon looking for birds with binoculars, listening for the sounds, looking them up in the books. They had these books that have the electronic noises so they could hear what the bird would sound like. And they found some amazing birds. She learned bird calls. They got to spend the day outside. And that really continued to spark her interest. Apparently, on the way to school the other day, she said to her mom, "I think I hear a white-chested warbler." True story, 100% true. So it's an example of finding something that your child is really interested in, doing a little bit of digging, maybe doing some research with them if your children are older, and trying to think outside the box and figure out a way to encourage that interest and at the same time expand their horizons. Let's look at the next one. All right, we know that there's a lot of research behind learning outdoors. And one of the main things is that it actually clinically decreases stress and anxiety. And that physical activity lowers our cortisol levels, and it boosts our dopamine levels, and all of the good brain chemicals get to be activated, and those stressful brain chemicals start to decrease. So being out in nature has a tremendous effect on our mood as well. It also increases physical activity, just getting out there and walking, taking a little hike in the woods, through a ravine, through a path, even just in your neighborhood is a good start. We also know that there is a lot of research about learning through discovery and being hands-on about your learning. We like to look at that as multimodal or multi-sense learning, so that you're learning with all of your senses, not just your reading and writing senses. And some interesting research about ADHD and learning outside is that it actually improves self-discipline, and it allows for greater concentration when you are in the outdoors or physically doing something while you are learning. And another lovely thing is that it develops that environmental awareness, so that we are being more at one with nature, and understanding how we impact the world around us as well is really important for kids to understand that when we throw out that gum wrapper, where does it go? And we want to keep our land pristine as well, as much as we can anyway. All right, let's look at the next one. So let's talk about backyard learning. So we know that we have a few different ages here, and we know, let's just check on our chat for a moment. Oh, I forgot to mention that I will be stopping periodically, and I'm going to open it up. We've got a very small group tonight, so we can have some more interaction. If you've got particular questions for me, then send them at me. That's my favorite part, is doing that question and answer period. But I'm going to leave some time so that we can do it in an organized way as well. Okay, let's take a look at Anka Trisiak and her comment, which was that her son is 13, he's in grade 7, he's discouraged due to the limitations of the pandemic. There's no socializing or sports, and I can totally appreciate that it's crushing him. Learning is more of a challenge than ever. Screen time is a disaster. I hear you. I really hear you. And I don't think that you're alone. And that's part of the reason why we're giving this presentation today, is to really encourage us as parents to think a little differently about getting off the screens and outside, and also to encourage our kids to be doing the same. So we're going to continue to talk about that as we go along. All right, let's look at backyard learning. So even if you can't get far out of the city, even if you don't have a beautiful cottage that you can get to, or a ravine near your house, just getting outdoors, just getting to your balcony if you live in an apartment, or getting to, behind your building or behind your house, something that gives you that fresh air and you can get your hands in the soil or play outside. It doesn't even have to be a particular nature activity. You can just build a tent and read outside, or read in a hammock, or a nice pile of pillows. It's a change of scenery, it's the fresh air, it's hearing the sounds of nature that's going to take you out of that kind of being in the box of being at home for so long, day after day, and being on the screen so much. So we've got some examples of building something, planting things, doing experiments. And those experiments, I know we've got parents here with older children as well, but I have to tell you that You know, anytime you do a baking soda and vinegar experiment, everybody gets involved and it's fun for everybody. Let's take a look at the next slide. Moving on. Joelle's our slide. Oh, there we go. Joelle's our slide pusher today. So if we are able to get outside of the city or outside of our own neighborhood, there are so many things in Toronto that we can do. And Toronto, that's one thing actually that I've discovered over the pandemic is that I have lived in Toronto all my life. I was born here, I was raised here, I'm raising my kids here. And I had never actually taken full advantage of all of the things that were available, even in my own neighborhood that I just didn't know about. So at the beginning of the pandemic last year, you know, we started to search out the ravine trails. And Toronto has the most incredible ravine trails ever. It goes from like far north of the city all the way through the city and then, you know, follows the Don River, and then you can actually end up downtown if you wanted to take a trek from beginning to end. And we've got some cool ravines near us, and we started using them and discovering that they actually, you know, you take one path one day, you come back the next day, you take a right turn or a left turn, and you end up somewhere different. So the fact that we have this beautiful opportunity around us is something to be taken advantage of as well. If you're not from Toronto, then you know, look into the maps in your area. There's something called All Trails, which is an app you can put on your phone, ALLTRAILS, and it is you basically put in your location, or you can search for locations geographically, and then it tells you all the conservation areas in that area, how long the trails are, how difficult they are, whether they're flat or they're rocky. And that's really been fun for us because we keep trying different places each weekend. Staying in the city again, we've got lots of places that are interesting and lots of parks that will give us those opportunities as well. All right, let's move on. So this is something that I discovered last year through an educator friend of mine, a colleague of mine, who has 3 young kids. And he told me that you can actually go foraging in the city for fruit and edible food. So if you go to MapTO and you do a search for the fruit trees of Toronto, you'll see this beautiful, colorful map. And each color represents a different type of tree and a different type of fruit. And you can actually take a walk, you know, within a half an hour and at different times of the season, and fill your basket with all kinds of things. I know near our location downtown at Bloor and Spadina, that right along Spadina Road at that point, there are several blackberry trees. And in sort of the height of their season, you'll know it's the height of their season because when you look on the ground is like purple, it's got purple stains. But when you look up, you see these beautiful, full, ripe, delicious blackberries. And when they are on city property, you are free to pick them and eat them. And there's nothing wrong with them. You have to, of course, check which berries you're eating. You never want to eat a berry that you're unsure of, but it's a really cool thing to do, to plan your route of a walk or a nature walk based on the trees that you're going to find. And like I said, there are many, many trees on city property that are there for the picking. Let's take a look at the next one. So part of getting outside and looking at the beauty of nature is also being able to look at nature in a different way. And Andy Goldsworthy is an artist who does just that. He looks at nature in nature, but then augments it and changes it so that we look at nature in a different way. And he takes all of the natural elements. So in these pictures, you'll see leaves of different colors. You'll see rocks and stones. You'll see potentially feathers, anything that he can find to use. And he will create a piece of art with it and then watch it over time. And then he photographs these pieces of art over time to see how they change, how they morph, and how they also are destroyed, you know, how they change as the wind blows them or as the rain comes, etc. So when we do our class, we have a class called Mini Masters, which is an art class for 3 to 5 year olds. And we talk about the different artists, professional artists and masters, and then we emulate their work. We're inspired by their work. And I would challenge you and your family to take a look at Andy Goldsworthy's work and start to put some things together yourselves. And perhaps over the summer or over a period of time, do a series of pieces of artwork or art installations with natural objects that you find in the garden, in the park, at the beach, at your cottage, wherever you are, and then take pictures of them as they either decompose or change over time. And you can create a whole photography exhibit. You could post that to YouTube or do a TikTok video or send it around to your friends, all sorts of different things that you can do with it. But you will learn about the artist first, and then you can be inspired by that artist and try some of the things that he's tried and make it your own as well. I'm going to open it up for questions for a moment. Is there anything, any questions that you have or any comments that you have? Has anything that we've talked about yet gone, oh, that's interesting, I might try that? We'll give you a moment to think about it. And Andy Goldsworthy is not the only one who works with art and nature and looks at things in that way. There are many artists that do, and that's also could be part of the research that you do with your family, which is which artists use natural materials and how do they use them within that place. So Jamie says, great ideas, thank you. Love the fruit picking walk through Toronto. You know what? It's not only fun, but delicious. And you only have to pack half a snack because your fruit you can get on the go. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we're going to break our learning down now into age groups or grade groups. So we will talk about each grade group as we go along, and we'll stop for questions at a certain point as well. All right, so let's talk about JK to grade 3 learning outdoors, as particularly language. We're going to talk about language, we're going to talk about math for each grade. So when we start at the very beginning, I mean, this age group is, oh my gosh, they're like little sponges, and they can have so much fun just with a pot of bubbles and a bubble blower for 20 minutes or half an hour. But we can also infuse the learning part of things as well. And one way to do that is to look at, start with a theme or start with a book. So we've got a few of the garden books, the Eric Carle garden books as examples: Tiny Seed, The Grouchy Ladybug, she's really grouchy, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Very Quiet Cricket, etc. And if you use a book, especially a book that your child already knows as a starting off point, you can take that and create activities in your own garden or outside based on the theme of the book. So let's just talk about reading, particularly practicing letters or practicing sounds, which we call phonemes, that are the words broken down into parts so that we can squeeze them back together. Let's say you are working on your alphabet. Writing in sand is a great way to do it. Not only is it tactile, so you're making the shape, but you're also taking it beyond a paper and a pencil, which makes it much more interesting and exciting. Writing in the sand, writing with chalk on the sidewalk, just for practicing letters. You can see in the picture that the parent has drawn the top line and the bottom line and the dotted line so that we can practice the proper proportions of the letters and where they start and where they end. We could use not only those things, but a soapy tray. So if you took a cookie tray and you just put a little bit of either shaving cream on it or soap suds on it just to get a little bit of a film, and then use your finger to write in the tray. That's another great way to practice your letters or spelling patterns. I love to make scavenger hunts. So if you were going to maybe make little cards with sight words on them, or perhaps your spelling patterns like AR, OR, IR, etc., hide them around the garden. Just a little tip: keep track of how many you've hidden, because then you'll know how many there are to find. I can't tell you how many times I've hidden things in a garden or around the house or around the office. And then I think, oh my goodness, I forget how many I've forgotten. How many did I hide? And then we end up finding them months later. So keep track of how many you put out there. And then you can have the children find the different letters or the different sounds, put them together, create words, practice their sounds. Again, it's something that doesn't take a lot of planning. You need some cue cards, maybe you write the letters or the sounds, and then you hide them around, and then the fun is really in finding them. And if you reverse it, where you are the one that's looking for them and your child hides them, that sometimes is even more fun for the kid, and you can play hot and cold. And then once you've gathered all of your letters or sounds, make some words with them, or make, if you're using sight words, make a story or a sentence with them, and just keep extending that practice a little bit further, and see how far you can take it. Of course, any of these activities, I think, to keep in mind, when your kids have had enough, your kids have had enough. And it's okay not to get to the end of the game or not to get to the end goal if they've had enough. Hold on to it, put a pin in it, pause for the day, and come back and finish the game or try again the next day. But there's nothing more frustrating than a kid who's already frustrated and a parent who's also getting frustrated, because that just takes the fun out of it altogether. So if you get to that saturation point, no problem. Step back, play again another day. All right, what else have I got on my list? Oh, other things to make outdoors, anything that's really hands-on and messy, mud pies, slushy pies. And then if you create something, you can take that piece of interest and create a paragraph about it. That's for a little bit of the older kids, maybe grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, where you notice something, or you find a bird, or you find something in nature, or you find an interesting rock, and you want to create a story around it. Take that item and use that as your jumping off point for a short paragraph. And I want to say short because grade JK to grade 3, we're not expecting pages and pages of writing. A sentence, sometimes 2 or 3 sentences, is really all that you need to do to keep those juices flowing. All right, let's look at the next one. Math, outdoor math. So you'll see here on the picture with the sticks in groups. So part of that primary learning in math is all about place value. And that's understanding your ones, your tens, not so much into the hundreds yet, but ones, tens, and hundreds, let's say. And it's all about understanding that when we've got a group of ones and we get to the 10th one, we're going to scoop that together and make a group, and that becomes your group of 10. And you can see in that picture where the twigs have been divided into groups of 10, and then numbers have been made from those groups. So anytime that we can take items and group them into tens and ones, you will be practicing the curriculum for that early math. A really important concept, because when students start to add numbers together, we want them to be able to see groups of 10 together. And we also, when they start adding larger digits, we want them to be able to understand that when you get past the number 10, then we have to move something over to the next column so that we can keep our addition, or if it's subtracting with regrouping, we can keep our subtraction in order. So understanding the difference between tens and ones is important. And when little ones actually gather bundles of 10 and tie them together, it really makes an impression in terms of what a group of 10 would look like. Another example in the middle are the leaves, and looking for leaves with different points, or things, stems that have different numbers of leaves on them. And it's a great way to practice counting. So you can see the top one on the left, you're counting by twos because that stem has 2 leaves coming from each side. So you could practice counting by twos. If you gather some, I was going to call them shamrocks, some clovers, you can count by threes, etc. The different leaves have different numbers of points. So practicing counting by different groups of numbers, also a really essential part of the curriculum, because that idea of skip counting, or counting by that number, starts to prepare us for multiplication later on. And we start to talk about skip counting and multiplication late grade 2 and into grade 3. So you want to be practicing counting by twos, by fives, by tens, so that they're getting into the rhythm. And when you see it in nature, again, it's going to have a greater impact. The last picture is, again, gathering items based on a number. And with my own kids, I remember taking my kids out to the park, and we started to gather pine cones in different groups. And then I had my nephew and my daughter with me, and they were about 5 or 6. They started a line of pine cones. So they each had their own pile they gathered, and then they just started adding to their line to see who could get farther away from me. I guess it was, they were trying to get away from me. No. But once they created their line, then we went back and we counted them to see who had a longer line. We've got a comment. Let's see. Jamie says, I love the idea of hiding the letters and trying to find them and then make words and then going into sentences after. Loving the math ideas too, is stronger in math. But this is great to make sure that the basics are embedded. I think, you know what, Jamie, you make such a good point, which is it's not always about learning something new. Part of avoiding summer slide is reinforcing the learning that's already happened and making sure that that's really solid. And there's nothing more satisfying than knowing that you know how to do something really well. Because when we learn something new, there's often that kind of what I call the dark, uncomfortable part, where you're like, I think I know it, but I don't know it so well. It's a little uncomfortable. I don't feel so secure in it. But the more you practice it and you become an expert in it, then the stronger that child feels about that particular thing and the confidence increases. And that feeling of success is the game changer that will allow kids to really take that success and confidence and apply it when they don't always feel as confident or in areas where they don't have the same proficiency. And it's multidimensional too, not just learning in one mode. You got it. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So you can see in this other picture that we're practicing the letter, the shapes of the letters, and then the number that goes along with that shape. So like sounds and symbols, with math, we're practicing the symbol and the amount that goes with it. Awesome. Let's look at the next one. We've got a couple of ideas for science here for the JK to grade 3s. I mean, if you're going out to the garden or out to a park, what better thing to talk about than parts of a plant and all the different parts of a plant and how a plant grows. And even if you don't have a garden, you can start the little seedlings in your house, in a greenhouse or right by your a sunny window and watch that plant grow. It's great to teach responsibility because you're teaching that you've got to water the plant every day. It's got to sit in the right sun, etc. They're learning different parts of the plant, etc. Other science things, bubbles. Oh my goodness, bubbles are a science experiment in and of themselves. And you can create your own bubble blowers or bubble makers just with straws and string, where you thread the string through the straw, which will also practice those fine motor skills. And then you dip it in the solution and you blow through it. Or you can get bigger with, larger straws or even sticks. There are many, many things you can do. And I would encourage you to actually experiment with different bubble solutions. You can find lots of recipes online. My trick is to put a little bit of glycerin into the solution because that just helps to keep them, to stick them together. And then they don't pop as quickly. So again, looking at how big a bubble can you make? You could even keep a chart of the bubbles or use your iPhone or your camera and do some slow motion. Oh, I've got some beautiful pictures of my daughter doing these slow motion bubbles, these giant bubbles. It was so much fun. And that was just last year and she was 11. So, it spans the ages for sure. Collecting bugs humanely, of course, we don't want to, suffocate them or anything like that. But anything where you're collecting items and you're watching how they're changing or growing. Once we actually were fortunate enough to have a butterfly, a cocoon that was developing on our porch. And every day we would go out and check it. And we happened to be there the day that the butterfly actually came out of the cocoon. So through this process, we had been researching butterflies. We had been reading books about butterflies. We knew, what stage the larva was at, and we knew the chrysalis and all the words that went along with it. And then when the day actually came when we got to see it come out of its cocoon, it was really quite magical. And then watch its dry leave or watch it dry. Can't say that. Watch it dry its wings, and then it flew away. But that was a pretty magical moment. And we don't have that opportunity all the time, but you might find, cocoons with caterpillars in them and in the trees in your neighborhood. Keep an eye on them, keep a chart, see where they're at in their process. Okay, let's move on. Let's move up a little bit. We're going to talk about the grade 4 to grade 8 learning, and we're going to start with language. So, of course, reading and reading for all ages. I mean, it is so important to continue to encourage our kids to be reading through the summer and to really be taking that screen break, that 20 minutes, half an hour a day, finding a comfy spot. I just love the way that tent is pitched in the garden with lots of pillows and a comfy, cozy spot to read. If you have a pop-up tent, that's always a good thing to use, or just take 2 lawn chairs and throw a sheet over top. Bingo, you've got a cozy place to read. Giving a student or a child a new notebook for the summer might be encouraging them to jot notes down, keep lists, write observations, all kinds of things, or just to write their thoughts as a journal, or start writing a story using the ideas that come to them while they're outside. Lots and lots of books. There are so many books. I mean, I could be giving you lists of grade 4 to 8 books, novels for days. This little snippet is multicultural, some middle grade level summer reading multicultural books. The public libraries have tons and tons of resources, and even with the pandemic, you can still get you could get your books electronically, and now that we're in lockdown, it may be difficult to actually get them from the library. I'm not sure what the rules are right now on that, but I am hoping that things are going to ease up a little bit and we'll be able to, exchange books like we used to do in person again, or at least a drop off and a pickup. So don't be afraid to look to the libraries or to do a switch with neighbors or friends or cousins. We actually at Ruth Max Learning Space will be having ongoing book clubs for different age groups throughout the summer. So if you want something more formal, we will have a summer book reading club and like a literacy circle where we're going to do activities and read the book together and all sorts of things. Cindy says, Toronto Public Library is still doing pickup drop off for books, even in lockdown. Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. It is great. I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. That's one thing I didn't check before I came on tonight. So thank you for sharing that. Some other ideas. Let's talk about using your 5 senses. And this is a big part of writing, and using the senses that you see, your hearing, sound, sight, touch, taste, and getting a student or a child to put themselves in that position. So maybe, you give them a snack of an apple, and part of that snack, you can brainstorm or write things down. What does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? How does it feel in your hand? How does it feel on your tongue? Brainstorm as many questions as you possibly can together, and then you can get your kids to write that down, maybe even create a paragraph about it or a story about it. What we're looking for is really that little spark of inspiration. And what is that thing that's going to get your kids to think about something differently and then be able to express it differently as well? I think it's Anne Katrusiak. I think that's how we're saying it. She asks, what's a suggestion to get him to start reading again? He used to read above age range and now won't even pick up a book. I like the tent idea, but before we get there, do you have a trick to get them to want to leave the screen? Okay, let's take a pause and talk about the screen, because I think that it is a necessary thing. It's addictive. Being on the screen is addictive, and there's a lot going on. I know from my own kids that right now the screen is the way that they're accessing their friends. And so, they may be playing an interactive game where they're all playing at the same time and they can chat with each other. And it is a social aspect. And one of the things that I've talked about with my own children is really social time is important. We have to kind of put a parameter on it, and we're going to put a time limit on it. And we're going to say, I'm not going to yank the cord on her right away and say, oh my gosh, you've been on the screen for 3 hours already and it's time to stop. Yank, pull. No. It's sort of like when our kids were younger and they had to leave a party or leave a play date. We had to give them a little bit of notice, right? So I go into my daughter's room and I say, okay, honey, it's 4:15. At 4:30, I would like you to shut down and come out for a snack. I find that if I can lure her away, perhaps with something to eat or something that's a different thought pattern than being on the screen, it helps and it kind of breaks that connection between the screen, because that it's almost mesmerizing, right, being on the screen. And there are a lot of studies that tell us that the screen emits certain rays and our brains kind of get in in a rhythm of being on the screen, and it's actually very hard to switch modes. So we have to give our kids a bit of time so that they know that it's coming. Get them to actually eyes on you so that you know that they are listening and that they've heard you. uh, Maybe put a stopwatch or set an alarm or an alarm bell on the phone. We can also do things like limit the amount of time our kids have online through different apps and through different things through Bell and Rogers, etc. So if you want to go that route, you can. I prefer to do it through, conversation and making my child aware of what's healthy screen time and what's not healthy screen time. So setting a time limit, letting them know ahead of time when that time limit is going to come to an end, and also trying to distract them with something else. So come on out for a snack. Come to the kitchen. I need your help to make a salad. Or, hey, I've got to do the grocery shopping. Why don't you come with me? So it's breaking the cycle or the pattern for them, and it breaks the brain waves. It interrupts the brain waves enough to go, oh, okay, so now we're switching gears. Those are some of my quick tips. If I can think of more as I go along, I will share those. Um, some other ideas are to write a story about, an outdoor creature or a made up creature, or again, to do scavenger hunts, but for this age grade or age and grade level, they're going to be more advanced. They're going to have longer clues. And this, if you have more than one child in the house, it would be nice, to get them to write the clues for each other. If you have only one little kid, the parent is the one that's going to be writing the clues, or you can be working together to do it for each other. Um, the other thing I would, suggest is reading a novel that has something to do with outdoors or nature also, because maybe that novel will inspire that child to do more things outdoors as well. Okay. Um, let's move on. Grade 4 to 8, learning outdoors with math. So here is, we got a lot of stuff going on here. And one of the things for grades 4 to 8 that's really important about the math curriculum is multiplication, division, and fractions. And those three things alone can be practiced outdoors in a number of ways. So you see the picture at the top that shows sticks, and we have one stick that's, full size. Then we found another stick that is the same size, but we break it in half. So we show there's the full or the whole, and then we have two halves. Then we find another stick or series of sticks that will equal that same whole, but we've broken it into 4 equal parts. And you can challenge your child to keep going with this fraction chart until they get down to, an eighth or even a 16th if they've got some tools and they can snip or use twigs. But understanding how fractions work together and how they complement each other, and what the fact that one is the same or equal to another, but just in a different number of pieces, will help to plant the seed for stronger identification of fractions and what's an equivalent fraction, how fractions can be added together, etc. So using sticks or anything that is the same shape, it doesn't have to be a stick. You could use a chocolate bar. Oh, that's my favorite, is when you take like a chocolate bar that has squares, and you take that top row and that's your whole. And then you take the next row and you break it into 2 pieces, and then 4 pieces, and then 8 pieces, etc. So it can be done with food as well. The planting picture is really great to also show, let's say, perimeter or area, where you're going to take a certain, maybe you have a planter and you need to know how much surface area you will have when you fill it with earth. So you can use formulas to figure that out. Um, the other thing, as I said, multiplication and division are so, so important. And we start introducing multiplication and division grade 3 or 4, but we really expect our kids to have a good command of their multiplication tables by grade 4, 5, and certainly by grade 6. So if your kids don't have a strong recall of multiplication by grade 6, that is definitely something that you want to work on. And you can work on it. You can see in the corner in the top right, we have different what we call multiplication sentences or an array. An array is basically a group of items set out in equal lines. So the card that says 3 times 4, you see that there are 3 rows of 4 items. And you can collect these items, as you can see, acorns, stones, all sorts of different things you can find outside, and create cards with the number sentence on it. So for a child who's having difficulty understanding what that actually means, I always talk about that multiplication sign means groups of. So 3 groups of 4 or 4 groups of 3, and it still equals the same number. And then you can flip it and say, okay, if you took the total 12 and you wanted to take those 12 stones and break them up into groups of 3, how many groups would you have? And then we take that pile of 12 and we lay it out and see how many we get in each group. But that's really one of the biggest things that I could share with you, is to really practice the multiplication and division. You can lead it into fractions, you can lead it into area and perimeter, but everything in the curriculum, not everything, but most things in the curriculum, grade 4 and on, really depend on an understanding of multiplication and division. Some other things are money. Oh my goodness, who doesn't want to make a little money over the summer? Put a lemonade stand together. Talk about, and when you're making your lemonade, if you're making it from scratch, you can start talking about fractions again. You can talk about volume. You can talk about, if I put in half a cup of sugar, but I want to double the recipe, how much sugar do I need to put in then? Baking, another fabulous thing to do. Not always done outdoors, but if you have a little fire pit or you're going camping, certainly can be done outdoors. And then building. Building, I think, is a wonderful way to, again, practice math concepts, math thinking, and math language when you're building something that's fun. All right, let's move on. Some science experiments. Let's see. Oh, you'll see the one with the parachute. That's actually called the egg experiment, or the egg drop experiment. And you have a raw egg, and your child has to create something to hold the egg. And then you or your child is going to drop it from a certain height. It could be from the top of a deck, or just from the top of a tree, wherever you can drop it from. And then you have a competition to see whose vessel is going to keep the egg intact and at what height. So you start dropping it from a low level. If the egg survives, you move up a notch and up and up and up and up until eventually the egg will drop, and you see whose egg will stay intact the longest. This is a really great exercise for all ages, and the whole family can get involved, from young and to older, and parents too. It's creative, it's innovative, it's creative thinking and critical thinking, and you're trying to find the right materials to hold that egg. You see in the picture, somebody's created some toilet paper rolls on a sponge, and then they taped the egg inside. You can put all sorts of rules, parameters, so that the egg, of course, can't be held in by anything specific. And then they've created a parachute that's supposed to break the fall as it goes down. There are some classes in school that will do this. If your child hasn't done it already, like I said, it's a fun one. It's a really fun one. You can see slime. Oh my goodness, there were 2 years, maybe 3, where slime was just the ultimate thing in my household. I had pots of slime everywhere in the house, all sorts of different again, recipes, and you can talk about the scientific chemical aspect of it. You can find all that information online. And the classic volcano, creating a volcano. And this one with the Coke, that's really fun. It's where you use a Mentos and you pop it into the Coke bottle, and then it has a chemical reaction and then explodes as well. Word to the wise, be careful. And these things are messy, which is why we're suggesting that you do them outdoors. All right, any questions or comments so far about the grade 4 to 8 suggestions? I'll wait for a moment. And if not, let's move on to the next one. All right, so now we've got 9 to 12. I promised you, I told you I was coming back to it. So lots of cool things that we can do for language. One, depending on what's happening over the summer or how many kids you have in your bubble, in your household, making a movie where you start with script idea, brainstorming for a script idea, creating the script, gathering the costumes or the props, and then setting up the set or the stage. You can be doing it outdoors, you could be doing it indoors. Now, of course, this picture is pretty fancy. You've got all kinds of fancy material, but the truth is, and we know from TikTok that you can do just about anything on a smartphone, and the kids will really get into it. I think perhaps if you can brainstorm with your kids some topics of discussion, some things maybe that are really interesting or important to them, something maybe they want to create a message, maybe they want to have maybe it's more of a dramatic piece, a play or fiction, or maybe it's something that something that they're interested in or that they feel is an activist type cause that they want to spread their message as well. So making a movie, making an ad for something, a video, anything again that just the creative juices flowing should be encouraged. I love this one on the bottom, which is writing a poem and leaving it on the sidewalk. And last summer, my daughter used the entire width of our house to write, it wasn't a poem, it was a fill in the blank. So she wrote, "How are you today?" and then left a line, and then actual neighbors, we left chalk outside, which I wasn't so sure about considering the COVID situation, but we left it outside, and some people actually picked up the chalk and then wrote their answers in it. And then of course we let that chalk sit by itself for a few days and sprayed it with alcohol, and then we put it back outside again. And then again, another way to express yourself and another way to show your community who you are and what you're all about. We have here a picture of a barbecue. And one of the things that I think is a good thing for language is to start maybe plan something. Language isn't just about writing or reading. It's also about those critical skills of executive functioning and planning something out. So if you're having a family barbecue, if you're going on a camping trip, if you're doing something that needs planning, I would encourage your kids, your older kids, to be in on the planning and the strategic planning. So if we're going camping for 4 days, how much meat do we actually need? How much food do we need? How much, and get them to write the grocery list, get them to maybe even do the shopping, but something that involves them that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it has a plan that they have to put in place that is moving from one step to the next, and the next step can't be done until that first step is accomplished. Anytime that you lay out any type of executive function or planning strategy wise, you are working that brain muscle that is needed for writing an essay, planning how to do your work in a timely manner, planning how to manage having 3 or 4 different deadlines in the same week. So we're just taking it outside of the classroom, but the skills are still the same. Some other things might be creating an advertisement for a service that they might be doing, writing a newsletter, creating a newspaper on a theme. Again, maybe you are having, you've got a large extended family. Maybe you want to encourage your child to create a family newsletter, something that other people can share as well and contribute to, and your child becomes the editor so that they're, again, organizing and disseminating all that information. Okay, Marisol asks, would you consider audiobooks reading? Oh, such a good question. Thank you for that question. Yes, my short answer is yes. I'll tell you though with a caveat. The best way that I like to use an audiobook is when you're actually looking at the real book and you're following along with your ears and your eyes. And there are many, many studies that say that even if you are not reading the book yourself independently, but you are listening and you're following along, your reading fluency will continue to advance through that exercise. So for a lot of our students who are not big readers, they don't enjoy reading, it's a chore, or it's really actually very difficult for them. We always encourage them to have the book in front of them and use their eyes and their ears at the same time. Now, let's say you're on a long trip, you're not a good reader in the car like me, I get nauseous. So I would say hearing the language and hearing good, strong literary language is just as important as reading it yourself. So if you are listening to a novel and it's it's a higher vocabulary level than you might choose for yourself, then you're getting the gain, you're getting the advantage of that as well. So I would highly recommend audiobooks. Yes. And there are lots of ways to do that. Through the library as well. So you don't have to have a subscription to something. So yes, thank you for that. All right. What else have we got? Let's move on to the next one. I have, what else? Okay. Learning outdoors with math for those grades 9 to 12. So this is a little bit tricky because of course the math curriculum from grade 9 to 12 is very different, starting in grade 9 and ending in grade 12. But again, the idea here is that you want to encourage math thinking. You want to encourage financial literacy. Huge, huge, huge. If that's the only thing that your child is going to get into over the summer, math-wise, focus it on finding a part-time job or doing some chores or creating a business or, the picture of going on a road trip, mapping out where you're going to go. What is the gas? How much gas are we going to need? How much is that gas going to cost if it is $1.28 per liter like it is today? I filled up my car. So anything that can get your child thinking in an entrepreneurial spirit is a really great thing. Again, that encompasses, like I said, the executive functions, the language portion, the math portion, and really encourage them. If they have time on their hands and they want to start a car washing service in and around your neighborhood, and they can do that in a COVID-friendly way, why not? I mean, there's nothing better than earning your own money and being able at the end of the summer to say, wow, look what I did. And who knows where that's going to take you. Lawn mowing, car washing, dog walking. You could even grocery shop for other people in a safe way again. So lots of ideas. And again, it's a great opportunity for a child and a parent to have those conversations and those brainstorming sessions that might even open up conversation to something else. Never be afraid of a conversation with a teenager. You never know where it's going to go. Building is another thing. So if you have maybe some repairs to do around the house, let's say you have a room to be painted. Perfect example of math language learning, where you have 4 walls, but 2 of those walls have windows on them. So what is the surface area of each of the walls? How much paint are we going to need? How much paint do we need to cover X amount of space? How much is that paint going to cost? Etc. You can really take it far, and that's actually really real world learning, and that's the best kind of learning in my opinion, because it's something that they are going to need not just for now but for the future as well. If you look on the bottom right hand corner, you see a piece of art, and that piece of art has a grid in front of it, and this is an art trick, but it's also a math trick where you can copy a piece of art by creating a grid and then looking at each square and creating what's inside that square, 1 square at a time, and then you put the whole picture back together. It helps with proportion, and you have to measure it out so that you have equal squares, on all dimensions. So again, just another way of looking at a piece of art or a piece of something that's entertaining, but it's also math related. Okay. Let's see, what else have we got? We've got some ideas, general ideas of learning with treats. But before we go on, are there any questions about the upper level math language? We didn't do a science for this one, but experiments are always a good thing. At the grade 9 to 12 level, we're expecting our kids to be able to read longer, maybe read a psychology, not a psychology book, but a magazine that has a case study in it, and maybe discussing different case studies, things like that. So think about other types of reading that are not just novel based, but we can look at psychology, sociology, history, experiments, current events, politics. All of those things are valuable. And again, great jumping off points for either writing their own opinions or having discussions, having a debate, anything that again gets a child to think about how to break down information and then put it back together. All right. Any other aha moments or things that you've liked so far? I love to get feedback. It's very difficult, when you're on the one side of the screen and you don't know who you're talking to. So anytime you can throw in a suggestion or an idea, I love it. Okay. Jamie says this is fantastic. Yay. Let's move on. Learning with treats. Okay. And Marisol says lots of great ideas. Thank you, Marisol. So learning with treats, who doesn't like treats? And summer is the best time for treats. So, when we look at the smoothie picture, you could have your kids write, experiment, try their own different recipes, keep track of what they like and they don't like, and then write out a formal recipe. So again, you're looking at strategic planning. What do you need to do first? This is called, there's a special name for it. It's a type of writing. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. It'll come to me. But where you write a procedural, where you write out the procedural and you write step 1, step 2, step 3. And that's something that our kids can practice at any age, because again, it helps us to think linearly, and it also helps us to break our projects into smaller pieces. We could, again, plan and write the menu for a family barbecue, write out the shopping list, the ingredients, budget, how much it's going to cost. I love the patterning with fruit. I did this for one of my child's birthday parties. That was one of the activities. So we made fruit kebabs, and then they each had their own fruit kebab that they ate later when it came time for dessert. Patterns, colors, subtraction, multiplication, division. You can do a ton of stuff, and it's yummy too, and healthy. You could also make a store, a pretend store, and use play money to make totals, make change for your customers, sell different items. You could actually be selling real things with fake money. Who knew? All right. Jamie says, I'm also taking the older kids' ideas too for my son. Great. You know what? That's the beauty about this, is that you can take a little bit from here and a little bit from there. If something sparks your interest or sparks your creativity, go with it. That's the whole point, is to make it fun and to make it interesting. All right, let's look at the next one. So at Ruth Rumack's Learning Space, we have many, many summer programs that are going on online at this point. We are hoping to be able to do some in-person stuff by September. Fingers crossed, we'll see where we end up. But for the summer, we've got lots and lots of group programs, and our group programs follow the same philosophy as our one-on-one. They are highly multimodal. So we use lots of different modes. We are highly creative educators. They are multisensory in as big a way as we can do over the internet. But first and foremost, they're created by our educators. They are researched, they are perfected, and we make sure that we have a very clear idea of beginning through to the end. So we know what is the goal that we want our kids to achieve by the end of this program, and what are they going to take away from them. So you'll see we have a whole host of math programs for grade 8 review, 9, 10, 11 math review. We also have our problem solving for grades 4 to 6 and grades 7 to 8, where we really break down how do you solve a word problem, with lots of repeatable steps and lots of real world problems for them to be engaged with. Keyboarding and note-taking classes. We have a whole host of written expression classes where we work on first the paragraph. How do you create a really strong paragraph, through to an opinion essay? Again, very clear steps, one step after the other. And then for our older grade 9 to 12s, we talk about research essays and how to create a research essay from beginning, brainstorming, coming up with your idea, creating a thesis, or proving your point, and then moving on through to pulling all your proof together, your examples, and then the finished product. And as I was talking about earlier, we've got our junior book clubs, and then we have some test prep, which is for kids who are going to try to get into a private school at the grade 5 to 7 level or the 8 to 11 level. And then we also have test preparation for the SAT, where we are preparing kids to take the entrance exams for United States universities. So this is our offering of summer programs. We will be adding some more programs as time goes along, so keep checking back. And let's take a look at the comments. What have we got? They're coming in. I love comments. Let's see. Cindy says, love the executive functioning ideas for older kids, planning a barbecue, etc. Also love the family newsletter idea, skill development, and also a way to connect with family. I think right now that's just so important, because I was just thinking to myself, in the last year and a half, I've probably seen my brother-in-law and sister-in-law maybe 4 times at a distance. And where we were used to being together at least once a week for a family dinner, we now go several months without seeing each other. And that's no good. That's not going to keep us together. So it's a great way to connect everybody. And thanks for all these great tips. Cindy says the essay writing and the keyboarding courses are excellent. My kids really enjoyed them and got great skills. Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate that. We really plan our programs thoroughly, and we look at what is the age and the stage, what is necessary, what do they need to be able to go back into the classroom and be successful, and what skills are they going to need for life. So all of our programs are built on that idea that it's not just a fun program for now, although we put lots of fun activities, everything is activity based, and then we take the skill from there. But it's really, what are our kids going to need to be successful in the future? Jamie says, Robert has been doing weekly one-on-one English and math classes with your team since December, and we are continuing that through the summer. Thank you, Jamie. And ongoing for the rest of the year. I can't wait to get him to your team in person when COVID is over and better. Charlotte, Justin, and Jennifer are just amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate that. And you know what? We can't wait to get back and see those kids in person and to be able to give high fives, like, skin to skin, not just virtually. Jamie says, this has been a great presentation. Thank you for your time and help. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that after a long day, I'm sure. So here are the takeaways. There are many ways to keep learning going during the summer. It can be less structured. It can be less stressful. Outdoor setting, get away from the screen. Remember not to put too much pressure on yourself or your kids to get to a certain goal. It's not about getting to a certain goal. It's about enjoying the journey and building skills and building confidence in a way that really solidifies their love for learning, because that's what we want it to be. We want it to be enjoyable so that they come back for more. We're saying try and get in a math and a literacy activity each day. But of course, that doesn't have to be sit down and do these worksheets, because we're not talking about that. We're really talking about, oh, hey, for these older kids, you know what, we're going to be driving for 180 kilometers. How many gallons or liters of gas do you think we're going to need for that? So it's just sort of planting these seeds. And what else? Include outdoor treats for motivation, for sure. And then keeping it fun and enjoying. And sometimes, truthfully, just taking a picnic blanket and going out to the park or into the ravine or into your backyard or onto your balcony is enough, just to take that moment, to take a deep breath in and let it out and just sit quietly for a moment. If you have any further questions, we are going to stick around. We'll be answering questions. If you have any further comments, I would love to get your comments. And we will be sending you a quick recap, and we're going to ask for a quick survey of how you enjoyed the presentation, how we can make it better. You'll get that in your email, as well as a link to the copy of this presentation so that you can watch it again, share it with your friends, whatever you need to do. And there are lots of ways to connect with us in Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those things. We're on all of them. And let's see what else. What else have we got to say? Jamie says we all need a ton of fun after this past year. Jamie, I agree with you. Totally agree with you. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And if there's anything else that I can do to help, reach out. You can always find us at info@ruthrumac.com, or just go on the website, ruthrumac.com. And I hope that you have taken away some seeds that you can plant. And I'm excited and curious to hear how they go for you. So if you try any of these activities, send us a text, or send us post something on Instagram, or follow us somewhere and share your ideas so that we can talk about it within the community. Thank you, everybody, and it has been my pleasure sharing this information with you. I hope you have a lovely night, and we'll see you next time. Take care.